So we have one sponge ball that goes into my hand, and then I have another sponge ball. When I squeeze it, I get two, and the other one jumps across. Look, I have a $20 bill that's becoming water as I wave across. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Let's just go. What's up, peoples? Welcome back to another video. This one's gonna be a little bit different because I've been watching some Zoom shows, and I've even seen a few lectures about how to do a Zoom show and how to put one together. And frankly, I've been kind of disgusted. I've been not so much with the magic. We can get into that a whole nother time. But instead, I decided, you know what? From what it looks like, most of these people just have no idea what they need, how to set it up, how to use it, the reasons why you need these things. So I decided, you know what? This is something that I do all the time, and I've helped a lot of people with it. So why not put together a little series on how to put together a Zoom show from the tech side of it, because that's just as important as the magic you do. So in this series, it's going to be a few videos. We're going to go into a bunch of different things. We're going to go into internet speeds, internet types, for Wi-Fi, why you should and shouldn't use it. We're going to go into computers, what computers work well, why they work well, what you need, minimum requirements. Then we're going to go into the video side of it, different types of cameras, why some cameras are good, why some cameras are bad, cost effectiveness, what you would need to make different kinds of cameras work on your computer. After that, we're going to talk about the audio side of it, how to make yourself sound good, how to get the sound you need when you need it. And then we're going to go into the lighting, how to make yourself look good, which is also important. And after that, we're going to go into why you use a certain background, why you should not be using a green screen, some ideas and tips to help you set up your background. Then we're going to show you how to set the whole thing up. We're going to go into my other office, and I'm going to show you my personal stream setup. Now, it's not made for Zoom shows, but it is a stream setup. It happens to be a 2 PC setup. A lot of work went into it, but it all works automatically now. And then after that, we're going to talk about some other options. If you want to have something more portable, something you can travel with, something that doesn't require you to get a new computer, we'll talk about that stuff too in the last set of videos that I do on this thing. In this video, we're just going to be talking about internet and the computer. That's it. The base, the beginning, the bottom, the start of your journey into becoming a better Zoom magician. All right, so the first thing you need to understand is the internet. You have to understand what type of speeds you need, how you can use the speeds, the best way to get that speed to your computer, which we'll talk about later, but just what you're paying your ISP or internet service provider for. So if you look up online, they'll say that to have a good stream, you need a minimum of 5 Mbps. Now, some of you may know a little bit about computers and think they're saying 5 megabytes a second, but they're not. They're saying 5 megabits a second. So a megabyte is 8 megabits. It's kind of weird, I know. So megabytes is usually a term of storage, and megabit is usually used for speed. So for instance, I have a gigabit connection. That is 1,000 megabytes. Technically, it never really reaches that speed. And it's supposed to be synchronistic, which is the same speed up and the same speed down. Now, a lot of service providers don't offer that. Some places only offer things like 15.5, 2010, things like that. The most important number for you is going to be the upload speed. It's usually the smaller number of the two, strangely, but that's the number you need. In my personal, most humble opinion, if you have more than 1 or 2 devices in your home that use the internet, you need a minimum of 20. Personally, that's what I think. Some people may argue it. This is just from personal experience. 20 seems to be a good round number if you have a few devices in the house that run on the internet. That way you can do your stream and you'll have enough headroom where you're not gonna cap out that, you're not gonna congest the network, and you'll be able to continue your stream. I can tell you without a doubt that I have seen some people who have done Zoom shows and they do it on a laptop on Wi-Fi. I'm gonna tell you right now, if you plan on charging for this stuff, you need a wired connection. If you have a laptop that doesn't have an Ethernet port, you can easily go buy an adapter. A lot of computers and laptops now are USB-C. They can handle the speed. They have Ethernet adapter dongles and docks. Plug it in and keep that computer plugged in while you're doing your stream. The reason why you don't want to use Wi-Fi is because the way Wi-Fi works is really weird. If, let's say, my speed happens to be 10, that's going to be an arbitrary number for this discussion, 10. If I have two devices on the network, it doesn't really go by how much speed the other one is using. It kind of just chops the speed in half. So each device has 5, and it does that for each device. So if you're using a wireless network, it becomes very difficult to manage your speed. Wired doesn't do that. It just uses what you need and pumps out what it needs to pump out, and that's about it. It doesn't have to leave anything open. Now, if you're looking at Wi-Fi because you really need to, they do sell Wi-Fi routers that will have 2.4 and 5 gigahertz networks built into the router. What that usually means is you have your BGN network and then you have your AC network. Now, years ago, there was only like B, then you got the faster one G, then they upgraded the speed to N, and now you have the faster ones AC. The thing is, the faster you go, the less distance you can travel away from that router. So if you have a B or G router, you can go pretty far outside of your place before you lose your signal. N gets chopped down more, and AC gets chopped down more, even more than that. But the speed also increases as you go through these different networks. So usually on these type of routers, which I have one, the N and G will usually be the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz will be your AC network, and you can put different things on those networks. Now, though that's good, but you're still going to have the problem of spending that bandwidth because you're using a Wi-Fi network, and any other devices will encroach on that. So you really have to consider what you're doing with your network and when, especially if you're charging for shows. The last thing you want is when your stream is stuttering, not because you don't have the right hardware, because you're using the wrong internet type, or your cables aren't fast enough for your router or your network or anything like that. I've seen streams crash because somebody in the house will just start doing something on their phone, and it starts to make the stream stutter and freeze because it's trying to catch up to what's happening. So do yourself a favor. This is your time to really show you're a professional. It's not just about the magic, it's about the look, and it's about what you put into it. So think about your internet, which is the bottom of everything, before you start this journey. All right, so now let's talk about the next step. So you have the internet you need. Now let's talk about computers. And this is where cost starts coming into play, aside from the internet, obviously. There are differences between a Mac and a PC that are very important to understanding what you'll need. Now, mind you, when we're talking about the computer, we're gonna talk about the actual hardware, and then we're gonna talk about the software and the requirements of that as well. Let's just start off the bat. Most people know that there are two types of computers. There's Apple and there's not Apple, right? Or a PC. Macs are great computers. I love Macs. The thing about a Mac is it's just this ecosystem that seems to work. But there's a lot of inherent problems when it comes with Macs and rendering video. So the way I stream, I use software called OBS, which I suggest all of you should too, and I'll explain why later on. But that takes a certain amount of power. That takes a certain requirement for that system to run. Let's start with the basics of what you need. If you want to run OBS, which again, I think you should, you're going to need a minimum of a quad-core processor. Now, when I tell you you need this, you absolutely need this. I had a friend who will remain nameless tell me they wanted to get into streaming. They had somebody put together a computer for them. And I kind of warned them. I said, let me take a look at this stuff before you do it, but they just went and did it. And they called me up and they asked me to help them set it up. And they're wondering why nothing is working. And what it boiled down to was the processor that they got with that computer just couldn't handle OBS. It was a dual core, not a quad core, and it just wouldn't run. Macs are great. They usually come Intel. They have the M1 chip. I don't know how that's really going to work with OBS. I guess time will tell. But let's say you have your quad core processor. You have to understand what this software does. This software is basically Photoshop for video live. So you have streams, and you have the scenes and the sources and everything layered up so it comes out the way you want it to on the screen. And it has to encode this stuff before it sends this out. It has to send out a finished product. That takes a lot of power, and it usually takes graphics power. And Macs, especially laptops, do not have graphics cards. So it's dedicated to the internal, the built-in graphics or integrated graphics of your CPU, which works. Obviously, you can see things, you can do things on your Mac, but there's a reason why games run so well on a PC. PC gamers know in depth the power of a graphics card. And that's the only purpose of the graphics card, is to do that. It generates the graphics that the computer sees. Frame rates, the things you see in these beautiful images, all from a graphics card. In fact, a lot of video editing software also uses graphics processing. So if you want to get more into graphics, you can get a Mac, but use Mac specific software. If you're going to use Adobe, a PC is going to be better, unless you have a lot of money, right? Let's be real. Get that super powered Ultra Mac, which I want. I want that Mac. I do want that Mac. The other problem with a Mac is something called thermal throttling. So for some reason, Macs are designed to run hot. So what happens is it will start to work and it reaches a certain temperature, and once it passes that temperature just a little bit, it literally stops running until it cools down just enough to keep running. And if you were to look at a graph of how this processor works, you would see it kind of going like this, and then it would hit a point that it would just judder. And that's it, thermal throttling, to make sure it doesn't overheat. It's a safety feature, but it's also an issue, because if you're streaming and you're trying to pump out this thing and this software is stopping intermittently to keep from overheating, you're going to get frame drops, you're going to get stutters, you're going to get lags, and it's just not a good looking stream. In fact, everybody's watched a stream or talked to a friend where these things start to happen online. I know you don't enjoy seeing that. It gets kind of confusing sometimes, and a paying customer definitely doesn't want to see it. So in my most humble opinion, if you don't have to use a Mac to stream, don't. There are ways around this, which we'll talk about in one of the last videos, which will talk about these units that you can get that will manage the hardware and the encoding for you. But a lot of those things come with a very high cost barrier, because if you're not using certain cameras, if you don't need a lot of those functions, you're paying a lot for something that may not be for you. But it does have a lot of benefits too, especially if you go the more professional route or if you're traveling or something like that. In my opinion, Macs are just not the way to go. Let's talk about a PC now. Okay, so the good thing about a PC, and mind you, I'm a Mac person, I love Macs, but PCs are just better for this. There's more software that runs on the platform. The add-ons and plugins you might need are more readily available. You can upgrade your system fairly affordably. You can build the system fairly affordably just to stream, get a graphics card and everything, and you'll never have to worry about the hardware side of running a stream. Now, you may run into internet problems, but that's going to be the internet's thing, and there's ways to tell what's going on. Personally, you don't have to get a super expensive computer. You can spend between $500 to $700. You could build a computer with like an i5 processor if you want to go Intel. I happen to know Intel better than AMD. Get an i5 processor, quad core, anything above that if you want, but i5 I think is a good minimum. You can get a graphics card like a NVIDIA 1660. Those usually go for about $300 or $400. You get 16 gigs of RAM. You can get that for about $40. A motherboard and a case, and you have your stream setup, not including Windows, a mouse, a keyboard, and a screen, or 2 or 3 or 4. I wouldn't go above 3 personally. I have too many. Right now, I think I have 7 screens on all of my computers. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't need more than 2 usually for a beginner setup. And there's a reason why I suggest 2, which we'll talk about in a little bit. This will allow you to have a system that has the power it needs to render the graphics, run the software, 2 monitors so that you can have one setup for your Zoom show audience and another setup with the information you need to make sure your stream is running properly. And there's other things out there which we'll talk about in later videos, some hardware peripherals that you can add on that will enhance the ability of your stream, believe it or not. I mentioned before OBS, and the reason why I mentioned OBS is because OBS itself, open broadcast software, is what a lot of streamers use to stream. And they just made, as part of the normal function of OBS, a virtual webcam. So in essence, OBS runs as your webcam. Now, how does this make sense, right? OBS allows you to manage a stream, scenes, you can have videos playing, music playing, you can have microphones that mute on and off, different camera angles, things that transition into something else, all these different things. And the benefit of that is you can't do any of that on Zoom. So if you have 2 cameras and you want to cut away to one, you can't on Zoom. You'd have to sit there and go into the settings. But if you use OBS as your virtual webcam and everything is set up in OBS, you can have a hotkey, just click a mouse button. If you have a stream deck, which we'll talk about, you can do that. All these functions can run. It allows you a different type of show. And if you're looking at a Zoom show as anything but a TV show that's live, you're kind of looking at it wrong. That's exactly what it is. You're using cameras, you're using the internet, you're using a computer. Why not give your customer the best it could be? Unless that's the specific show you're trying to do, which is fine too. But realistically, too many shows that I've seen online just don't understand those basic principles of hardware, internet knowledge, speeds, how to make it look better, anything like that. OBS will literally deliver you another sense of power in your show when somebody can introduce you and you can have a video playing in the beginning or a cutscene or intro music, or if something happens, you can put a technical difficulty screen, you can input applause cues and things like that. You can add graphics and all sorts of stuff you can control, which I'm not going to go into too much, but there's lots of ways you can control what is being sent out from your stream if you just use OBS as your virtual webcam. Is there a learning curve? Yeah. There is. You don't have to go very in depth with it. You can do something very simple. A good computer that can handle OBS running with good internet, and you already are leagues ahead of a lot of the other people. You don't need to spend a lot of money, but you do need to spend something, in my humblest opinion. It doesn't have to be a lot. And sometimes you may have this stuff just laying around. When we talk more about lighting and some of the audio stuff, I'll show you things that I do that I could pay a lot of money for, but I'm actually doing pretty cheap, even though I've spent a lot of money on this stuff. So think about that, put some notes together, and in the comments below, I want you to tell me what questions you have about internet and the computer needs for running a Zoom show. I hope you enjoyed it. In the next video, we're going to be talking about lighting, audio, and the video side of putting together a show using these things. Thanks a lot. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.
I'm a scrub, but you still love me, you love me. Even though I don't make no money, you've been there when the times get ugly. I'm a scrub, but you still love me, you love me. I'm a scrub, but you still love me, you love me. Even though I don't make no money, you've been there when the times get ugly.